because anybody could fake it for a couple of hours, days, weeks, maybe even a few years if they're crazy enough, but eventually their deepest thoughts and feelings will resurface. They'll burn out, and if the world is not in alignment with their ideas of how it should be or how they truly feel inside, they'll screw it all up and they'll end up right back where they started. Hey my friend, welcome back to the channel. It's Ricky Otto here, and today we are talking about the two processes of change, how to create change that lasts long term, and why so many people struggle to do so and why they get stuck. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So there's two processes to creating change. There's the internal process and the external process. The internal process consists of our deepest thoughts and feelings that move us into action. The external process consists of the behaviors and actions themselves that produce the real world results. And if we want to create change, we have to refine both of these and make sure they are in alignment. Because anybody could fake it for a couple of hours, days, weeks, maybe even a few years if they're crazy enough, but eventually their deepest thoughts and feelings will resurface. They'll burn out, and if the world is not in alignment with their ideas of how it should be or how they truly feel inside, they'll screw it all up and they'll end up right back where they started. So we've got to refine both of these things. And I can tell you right now, it's 80% the internal process and only 20% the external. It's 80% how we think and feel about things, and only 20% are actions and behaviors. And the reason is this: our mind can act as a sort of mental prison. We have thought patterns and beliefs that we carry with us throughout our entire lives. Most people, unfortunately, did not choose these, and there's a reason for that. We simply do not have the headspace, the bandwidth to consciously choose all of our beliefs and thinking patterns. And so we go off of experiences, cultural norms at the time, traditions that are embedded in society. And we take these little thought patterns and we repeat them over and over and over again. Most of the time, every single year, we have a cycle we go through. It's called holidays. And then we have daily cycles we go through, weekly cycles, monthly cycles. And we just repeat these stories and these beliefs to ourselves constantly. But what can happen is they can act as a sort of mental prison that keeps us confined to a comfortable space. Each belief, each thought pattern, each story we tell ourselves serves as a kind of bar that can keep us confined to a comfortable space. And anything outside of that won't be possible until we become aware of these things and consciously change them. And it's really not that difficult. So let's take Billy and Susan, for example. Billy and Susan have the same goal in mind. They want to go to the gym, lose a little bit of weight, and get a bit stronger. They know they need to eat healthy and work out consistently. But the difference is Billy has not gone to the gym consistently or eaten healthy since setting this goal, and it's been a couple of weeks now. Susan has been able to do those things. Billy is stuck here. He must change his internal process. The way he is thinking about his goals and the way he is thinking about his current situation is not compelling him to take action. He's not going to the gym consistently. He's not eating healthy. That seems pretty straightforward. Susan, on the other hand, she is going to the gym consistently and she is eating healthy. Now let's just say she's doing all of these things and she's still not achieving the results she wants to achieve. Okay, so we know that the internal process doesn't necessarily need to be modified. It's the external stuff. It's her behaviors, it's her actions that must change. She needs a new strategy. She needs a workout plan that is catered to her goals, her schedule, and the time she can commit to the gym. And the same thing with her meal plan. She must adopt her strategies. So she needs to work on the external process. Billy is stuck up here. Susan is stuck out here. And if we can clarify between these two things, well, then we can address our approach from there. So ask yourself this question: have you been consistently taking action towards your goals? If yes, awesome. The internal process is going well. If you have not, well, then the internal process needs some work. And we'll address that in a little bit. If you are consistently taking actions to your goals and you're not achieving them, well, then it's your behaviors and actions that need to be changed. It's the external process that needs your focus and attention. To further illustrate the internal and external process, let's talk about the thoughts, feelings, and actions and results cycle. It goes a little bit like this. You think thoughts, those thoughts make you feel certain emotions, your emotions move you into action, and your actions produce a certain result. Your results, when you observe them, change the way you think about things. And this cycle repeats itself over and over again as long as we are alive and awake. Well, you could even say that it actually affects you when you're sleeping too, because if you're having a dream, you are embedded in some random place in a random time with some random circumstances. You look around and you think a thought, you feel a certain way. You could feel good if it's a great dream, you could feel terrible if it's a nightmare. And that makes you take an action. That action produces a result, and sometimes in your dreams it's totally random, but the cycle is still at play. Your results will change your thinking. Let's pick on our friends Billy and Susan again. Okay, so Billy has somehow changed his internal process. He found a new way to think about his goals. He figured out a good thought pattern that gets him motivated and disciplined and ready to go. And so he's feeling good. He takes action consistently over the course of a couple of weeks, and he finally measures his results. He lost a little bit of weight, and he got a little bit stronger. However, it's not as fast as he would like it to be. He's not feeling particularly enthusiastic about that. So he looks at his results and goes, man, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this is going to take way too much effort, more effort than I thought. Maybe I'm not the person to do it. So he gets a little bit discouraged. He's not feeling very good. This dulls him into a state of inaction, which is an action of itself. And that produces the same result he's been achieving for several years now. And after a couple of weeks, he measures his progress. Not that there is any. And of course, as you can expect, he gained a little bit of weight back and he got a little bit weaker. He's stuck. Now he's discouraged. His goals kind of fade away and he's back to his normal self again. This is why so many people get stuck. They focus on the results that they have now. They let their circumstances and the conditions of their life as it is affect their thinking. They think to themselves, man, I'm never going to get out of this. This isn't for me. I'm not going to be able to get out. The whole world is against me anyways. What does it matter? It demotivates them. They're not feeling very great. And because of that, they don't really feel any drive to take an action. So they don't. And they're inactive, which inactive is action. Sitting there doing nothing is an activity. So they don't achieve any results. They sort of just maintain the status quo. And they repeat the process over and over again for several years. Sometimes people do it for the rest of their life. It's just unfortunate because at any moment we can make a change. Let's pick on Susan now. Susan has achieved the same exact results. She lost a little bit of weight and got a little bit stronger. But here's the difference. She focused on what she wanted to achieve. And she maintained that focus. She visualized it. She got emotionally involved with it. Gave her a good feeling that moved her into action. She achieved the result. She measured her progress. She saw it as progress. And she realized that while she is taking action, it's not as fast as she would like. So she realizes she has to modify the external process. So she finds a meal plan and she finds a trainer that can help cater her exercises to her needs within her time and her situation. And she continues to stay motivated. She's focusing on the goal, capturing her progress, keeping it in mind. Makes her feel really good. She takes consistent action over the course of a couple of weeks while modifying her external process, her behaviors and her actions. And she makes a significant amount of progress. She captures that progress, maintains her focus, and repeats the process over and over again until she achieves the result. That is what successful people do. If you or anybody you know is stuck, this is how we get out. What we have to do is we have to focus on the end goal. What is the outcome that I want to achieve in my life? What would it look like if I was already there? Close your eyes and imagine that, and ask yourself that right now. Go ahead and pause this video if you will, and write down the answer to that question. What does an extraordinary, magnificent, and beautiful future look like to me in the area of my health, relationships, finances? You name it. Name the category. Answer the question. Visualize yourself as if you are already at the end goal. This might require you to suspend your disbelief, because remember, sometimes our beliefs can act as a little prison bar that keeps us confined to a comfortable space. So suspend your disbelief. Give yourself permission to dream for a second. Answer that question. We have to focus on that end outcome, okay? Assuming you've done it and you paused the video and you did that. We maintain that focus until we feel good. And eventually that feeling, that sense of motivation and drive will move us into action. We'll take a new action. And because we take new action, we achieve a new result. We measure our progress. We adapt any sort of strategy that we need to. We assess the situation. We say, okay, if I modify my behavior in this area, I can make just a little bit more progress. You make the change. You stay focused on the outcome. Measure your progress. Keep it in mind. You feel good. You take action using the principles and the changes that you think you needed to make, and you achieve that result. That's how you get out. So ask yourself this question. Do you think the thoughts that you want to feel on a daily basis? Are they mostly positive or negative? Do you feel the emotions that you want to feel on a daily basis. Are they positive or negative? And how correlated to your thoughts are they? They should be directly correlated. Sometimes the feeling comes first, sometimes the thoughts come first. They all affect each other. And then, what actions are you consistently taking? What habits do you have? What routines do you do? Are there any rituals that you have? Meaning, are there any things you do to invoke some sort of emotion? Do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you do breathing exercises? Whatever it is, you name it. Do you listen to music and jam out when you're on the road? And then, do you have any systems in place to help remind you of what needs to be accomplished? Do you use a calendar, a task management tool? Whatever it is, answer that question. Do you think the thoughts you want to think? Do you feel the emotions you want to feel? Do you take the actions you want? And then, are you satisfied with the results you are creating? In each area of your life, are you satisfied with your health, your relationships, your finances? You name it. Before we begin making changes, we have to make a distinction between the two types of thought. There's shallow thought and deep thought. If I were to ask you, where do you think lasting changes are made, in shallow thoughts or deep thoughts? You're probably thinking deep thoughts, and you're right. Here's why. Shallow thoughts are fleeting. They're changing from moment to moment. They last a couple of hours, days, or weeks. Very rarely do they ever last a couple of months. This would usually be because of some life-altering condition. Let's say there's an injury or you got some sort of cold and it's lasting a little bit longer than usual. And this happens because it affects our state. We have to modify our behaviors, make different decisions, and because of that, it's affecting our mood and the way we're thinking about things. But shallow thoughts are not the reason that people spend most of their lives broke, or unhealthy and overweight, or the reason their greatest relationships seem to fall apart all the time no matter what. Shallow thoughts aren't responsible for that. That is deep thoughts. Deep thoughts are the deepest feelings, the deepest convictions, the deepest ideas we have about ourselves and the world around us and the people we communicate with. And these are the ones that affect change and create most of the results in our lives. And as I mentioned earlier, if we don't know what our deepest thoughts are, they can serve as a sort of prison that keeps us confined to a small place. And until we become aware of these things, we'll never be able to expand our horizons. If you have a deep thought, for example, that the world is hostile, and your partner next to you has a thought that the universe is friendly and it's out to support them and give them opportunities, you are going to act very different thinking the world is a hostile place than your friend who thinks it's a friendly place. Or if there's a third person who thinks it's neutral, it's a little bit of both, well, it's going to be totally different for them as well. While you aren't willing to extend any trust and communicate with strangers, your friend, on the other hand, is totally willing to communicate with as many people as possible and extend trust as often as possible, and maybe sometimes to their own fault, and they'll experience some hardship because of that. Whereas the person in the middle who thinks it's a little bit of both, and you gotta choose your friends carefully, and you gotta extend trust appropriately and be kind of tactful about it, well, then they're going to approach life in a whole nother way. But here's the thing, most people did not choose all of their deep thoughts. We simply cannot do it. It's passed on to us from our culture. Just like everything else, we adopted our habits, our rituals, the way we think from the people around us, from our friends, our family, from the experiences we've had in the past. We simply do not have the headspace to consciously choose all of these things. But if we focus on the big ones, we can begin making changes. And if we can change our deepest thoughts, then our shallow thoughts are bound to change as well. Because while our deepest thoughts form convictions about us and the world around us and the people we socialize with, our shallow thoughts sort of float around them. You can think of it like that. Somebody who thinks the world is hostile is going to have different thoughts on a daily basis about the universe and other people than the person who thinks it's a friendly place in there to support them. Now, the first step to creating change in our deep thoughts is to first become aware of them, which means we have to start paying attention. You can have a journal with you or put it in your phone, but just pay attention to what you're thinking on a day-to-day basis. Think about how you're feeling, because sometimes the emotion, the state comes first, and then you start thinking the thoughts. Something happens around you, and then it creates a sense of discomfort perhaps within you. Pay attention to what you're thinking at the time. Write it down. And then when you have enough of these, take a few moments and write down what you want to be thinking. Write down what you want to be feeling, and then repeat that to yourself. There's two ways to create changes in our deepest thoughts and beliefs. And that is through an intense emotional experience or through a massive amount of repetition. Most people will never change their deepest beliefs or thoughts until something emotionally significant happens. And unfortunately, most of the time, that's something negative. which is kind of a bummer because we have total control over this. We can make a change at any single moment, and it's through a massive amount of repetition. It doesn't have to be an affirmation style, but just take the thought that you want to think, and when you're experiencing the negative one, remind yourself of it. It's like, hey, here's what I want to think. It has to be somewhat persuasive. You can't trick yourself into believing something, but it has to be persuasive. You look at it and go, okay, you know what? That makes sense. I could believe that if I put a little bit of effort into it. Repeat it to yourself continually, and eventually, one day, you'll find that it sort of replaces the old one as your primary thought pattern. You have successfully replaced one of your deepest thoughts. If you can do that 5 times, 10 times, you're going to experience a massive shift in your internal world, and because of that, you're going to start modifying your external world, your behaviors and actions as well. When you used to believe the world was a hostile place, so you never went anywhere, now you're starting to think, okay, there are friendly people out there. You go out once or twice a year, and you experience those friendships and those connections, and because of that, you see opportunity in the world and you take it. That's one example of how you can create change in your deepest thoughts. Okay, so we know all of this stuff. How does it all come together to help us create lasting changes in our life? Well, we've identified which process of your life needs to be refined a little bit. Is it the internal process or the external process? And the question to figure that out was this: are you consistently taking action to achieve your goals? If you are not, well, then it's your internal process that needs to be refined, because the way you are thinking about things and the emotions you have inside of you are not compelling enough to move you into action. So the internal process has to be refined. If you are taking consistent action, but you are still not achieving your goals, well, then it's the external process that needs to be refined. It's your behaviors and actions themselves. You need a new strategy. You've got to seek out some guidance, some information that will help you refine your strategy so you can begin making progress. And then we've asked ourselves, are we satisfied with the results in our life, with our health, with our relationships, with our finances, with any other key areas of our life? Are we satisfied? And if not, well, then we have to figure out what result we want. We have to focus on it long enough. We have to think about it and visualize the new result until it puts us in a state of action that moves us in action. And then we achieve that new result. And we repeat the process until we get there. And then eventually we pick another one and we go after it. And then we also ask ourselves, okay, well, we have shallow thoughts and deep thoughts. What are my deepest thoughts? And this isn't something that you can solve in 2 minutes. This is something that takes a course of a couple of weeks, months, even years to figure out. You've got to pay attention. A little bit of self-awareness, some mindfulness, or that's what some people call it, but really it's just paying attention to what you're thinking and feeling at any given moment. Write these things down, and then write down what you do want to think and feel. And then when you have a trigger that puts you in this perhaps state you don't want to feel, remind yourself of what you do want to think and feel, and repeat it to yourself over and over and over again. It takes a massive amount of repetition or an intense emotional experience to create that shift in our deepest thoughts. So we need a compelling future, something to aim at, a result that we're after. We need to refine our thinking on the internal process, or we have to adapt our strategy. That's how we create real lasting changes. But the problem that so many people run into is they try to create change out here first, and they never really pay attention to the internal process. They try to modify their behavior, their actions, through their willpower, and because of that, they burn out. Their deepest thoughts and their feelings resurface when they get burned out, and they kind of undo all of the progress they have made. We want to avoid this at all costs. Hopefully you got something valuable out of this. If you did get some value out of this, then you'll probably like this video over here about the 3 E's: energy, emotions, and effectiveness. We've got to master these 3 things if we're going to elevate the quality of our lives.